Ok, xin chào anh chị. Chúc anh chị một ngày buổi tối chủ nhật vui vẻ ha. Thì đúng như lịch hẹn, 9 giờ tối thì Duy Anh online và muốn chia sẻ với anh chị về một cái video khá là hay. Một video mà mình được biết đến cái tên của nó từ năm 2016, và video này là một cái video nó có rất là nhiều các cái thông tin, thông điệp, góc nhìn về rất là nhiều mặt ở trong nó gọi là bao quát á, về rất là nhiều thứ trong xã hội. Và cụ thể nếu mà anh chị biết về một cái cuốn sách, đó là cuốn sách bí mật ha, cuốn sách Secret, thì ở trong này nó nói về một cái về luật hấp dẫn, và rất là nhiều anh chị đã biết đến luật hấp dẫn và đang áp dụng và đang triển khai. Tuy nhiên là nó có nhiều thứ lắm, nó có nhiều thứ về vũ trụ, về thông tin. Thì hôm nay là một ngày cuối tuần, thì Duy Anh cũng muốn có mặt ở đây để chia sẻ cho các anh chị về cái video này. Và đây là một cái video nó cũng khá là dài các anh chị, nó cũng đâu đó ngót nghét 2 tiếng. Thì mình sẽ tách ra làm 3 buổi livestream, và đâu 4 buổi livestream, và mỗi lần mình sẽ live khoảng 30 phút của cái video này. Và đây thật sự là một cái video mà nói thật là người giàu á, cái giới siêu giàu á, họ không muốn nhiều người biết về cái thông tin này đâu các anh chị. Và video này có mặt ở trên YouTube nhưng mà chỉ có đâu đó vài chục ngàn lượt xem ở đối với cái video có Việt sub á. Và cái video mà không có Việt sub thì nó cũng đâu đó có mấy chục ngàn thôi. Đó, nó rất là ít. Do đó nên nếu mà anh chị hứng thú thì chúng ta cùng xem cái video tối ngày hôm nay nhé. Và cái video này mình dự kiến khoảng tầm 40 phút thôi. Và một phần đằng sau, nếu mà anh chị nào có muốn giao lưu và đặt câu hỏi á, thì có thể chat lên để Duy Anh đọc được ha. Và để cho cái việc xem của chúng ta tập trung hơn, thì có thể chúng ta sẽ tắt chuông điện thoại, hoặc là chúng ta để chế độ room, tùy theo các anh chị. Và video này cũng sẽ được lưu ở trên kênh YouTube của mình, nên nếu anh chị nào bận rộn quá thì chúng ta vẫn có thể xem được lại video này nha. Không biết là cái đường truyền mình có ổn định không, thì anh chị comment để cho mình biết nha. Không biết là nó có ổn định không, chứ mình coi đây nó hơi giật giật thì phải. Alo alo, 1 2 3 4. Alo cả nhà, xem ổn không để mình bắt đầu cái video này nha. Rồi mình sẽ mở cái video này bên màn hình của mình, và chúng ta sẽ bắt đầu ngay trong video này để mình chuyển qua màn hình này nhé. Thì mọi người có thể chat lên là mình vẫn có thể đọc được. Rồi, để tai nghe lên.
eloquent expression of the universe's astonishing ability to come into perfect balance, and then to do what life is meant to do, to thrive. Thriving is the natural flow of life. Consider what is surely one of the greatest wonders of all, how a tiny egg and a single irrepressibly plucky sperm can unleash a process that brings forth in the end another one of us, a being of vast ability and unlimited potential, with a brain capable of complex and soaring self-reflection, legs made to dance and run, fingers nimble enough to weave a basket, play a violin, caress a face. If nature teaches us anything, it is that life is meant to work, and that like every living thing, our purpose is to thrive. And yet, for the majority of people on the planet, life is not about thriving. It's about surviving, just trying to hang on. Is this really the best we can do? Did the universe labor for nearly 14 billion years only to bring forth a species that would end up as an enemy to life itself and to its own home? I don't think so. My name is Foster Gamble, and I have spent nearly a lifetime trying to figure out what happened. What is happening that could account for the staggering agony and deprivation on this planet? As a young man, driven by the misery I saw and by my fear for our survival, I set out on a journey, seeking to answer questions like, is it even possible for humans to thrive? If so, why aren't we? My research led me to places I never expected to go, revealing surprising discoveries that seemed unrelated at first.
Ok, các anh chị, để nói sơ một chút là ông tiến sĩ Gamble này là người tổng hợp tất cả những cái thông tin, tài liệu có trong video này ha. Và đây là những cái bằng chứng có cơ sở khoa học, có tìm tòi của các nhà nghiên cứu từ những cái viện nghiên cứu hàng đầu và cũng từ những gọi là trường đại học hàng đầu trên thế giới á. Nên những cái thông tin trong video này là chúng ta được xem là có kiểm nghiệm thực tế. Nên các anh chị mình cứ tiếp thu thông tin thôi ha. Coi như là chúng ta chưa biết gì hết và chúng ta xem cái video này. Rồi mình tiếp tục nha.
But which turned out to be crucially connected, as you'll see. I found a code, a pattern in nature that's been embedded in arts and icons throughout the centuries. I believe this code holds the key to a new source of clean, sustainable energy that could completely revolutionize the way all people live. I came to understand how our economic system is rigged, and I found out what we can do about it. My journey revealed ways we can claim our power to create liberating, healthy systems everywhere on Earth. I have realized that we are not a mistake. We are simply mistaken. We've been blinded to our brilliance, shorn of our strength, ignorant of our genius, unaware of our true power and magnificence. But all that is about to change. I invite you to share with me the highlights of my unlikely journey. I've created this navigator to take us through time and space. Let me show you around. On this screen, we can access what I call our vitals. It's the critical data we don't get from the corporate media, which in the US has consolidated from 50 companies down to 5 in just over 25 years. We'll use this to check on how we're really doing. The right screen tracks how to chart a healthy, sustainable course for living on planet Earth. I call these the navigating insights. And this will be our compass. Instead of a needle seeking north in our Earth's magnetic field, our compass is the shape of the field itself. And that shape, as you will soon see, has amazing technological and social ramifications. After a lifetime quest, I've come to believe that this pattern actually holds the key to a world that works for everyone. So let's go.
Bây giờ mới là giới thiệu nha, bây giờ mới bắt đầu vô nội dung chính này kìa. Này.
I grew up in a world of privilege and power, attending elite private schools and then Princeton University. As a direct descendant of one of the founders of Procter & Gamble, I was groomed to be a leader in the establishment, but I chose a different path. I began to wake up when I was in elementary school. Adults were teaching me that the way to protect myself from a nuclear explosion was to duck under my desk and cover my head. That's when my serious questioning began. A couple of years later, I had a direct experience of universal energy. It happened one day when I was riding on a school bus, gazing out the window. I had a vision of a whirlpool pattern, and I just knew that the flow of energy I was seeing was the same in an atom as in our entire solar system. I felt deeply that I, too, was somehow made of that same pattern. This vision was what originally got me into science, into trying to figure out how the universe works and how we humans fit into the overall pattern of life energy. Years later, I learned that the pattern I saw is known by some in the scientific world. It turns out that in 1921, Albert Einstein got a Nobel Prize for discovering that when energy is released in the universe, there are little packets of wholeness that emerge. This pattern actually tells us a lot about how life evolves. Considering the enduring wonders of creation throughout the universe and how unsustainable so many of our human systems are, I figured learning how the universe creates and sustains life would actually be quite useful. Each of these little packets of wholeness that Einstein discovered, called a quantum, is made out of its surroundings, but is distinct within it, like a whirlpool in water. These packets are always the same pattern, no matter what size, and they are surprisingly relevant to issues as seemingly disconnected as the wars in the Middle East, the global financial collapse, and how to achieve justice for everyone. We're about to explore how. Mathematicians call this pattern the torus. The energy in a torus flows in through one end, circulates around the center, and exits out the other side. It's balanced, self-regulating, and always whole. I was first officially introduced to the torus by scientist and inventor Arthur Young. Futurist Dwayne Elgin explains how the torus is the primary pattern that nature uses for life at every scale.
Evolution means to unfold, to roll out. So the question is, what is the universe rolling out? And what the universe is rolling out is self-organizing systems, and you can see this at every scale. A self-organizing system is a technical term for just a system getting a hold of itself, knowing itself, essentially. And if we go to nature, we can look at and we can see these self-organizing forms throughout. We can see it in the cross-section of an orange, the cross-section of an apple. We can see it in the dynamic nature of a tornado. We can see it in the magnetic field around the Earth, a similar magnetic field around an individual. We can see it in the structure of an entire whirlpool galaxy. We can see it in the structure of a small atom. At every scale, throughout its entire history, the universe has one single project. It's growing toruses. The universe is a torus growing factory.
These toroidal dynamics are visible at various scales. One of them is at the galactic level, which are huge spinning structures with billions of stars in it. Looks like typically big arms of galaxies spinning around, and they have vortices that goes from the center out to the edge of the galactic halo that surrounds them. Stars move from this galactic disk out to the halo, down the vortices, and back out again. Stars like Arcturus, for instance, we know have done that path already. That's the appropriate description even for the atmosphere of our planet. The weather goes from the North Pole down to the equator and then back up. From the South Pole up to the equator and then back down. Even the dynamics on the surface of the sun are very similar. Of course, here we're looking at it from an external perspective on a small scale model. When you look at the solar system embedded in the galaxy, embedded in the cluster, embedded in the supercluster, we're traveling in this boundless sea of infinite torus flow.
The torus is like the breath of the universe. It's the form that the flow of energy takes at every scale of existence. But there's also an underlying structure in how the flow fits together, sort of like a skeleton. It's called the vector equilibrium, a term coined by one of the 20th century's greatest thinkers, Buckminster Fuller. Inspired by Fuller's visionary work, I spent decades researching the dynamics of the vector equilibrium and the torus. I became so excited by the potential of the toroidal energy form that in 1997 I co-founded a multidisciplinary think tank called the Sequoia Symposium to study the pattern and explore its applications. Our collected research convinced me that the torus and the vector equilibrium are primary patterns, fundamental to the creation of the universe at all scales. At the Sequoia Symposium gatherings, I learned of inventors who claimed they were using the torus dynamic as the basis for devices that generated energy without combustion. This revolutionary development, accessing what's sometimes called zero point or radiant or free energy, is now being called most simply new energy technology. Given that so much of the suffering in our world is the result of lack of access to energy, I realized that free, unlimited, clean energy would be one of the greatest breakthroughs in history. It could not just improve, but actually transform the quality of life on this planet. So I began to wonder who else knew about this pattern or about this powerful potential energy source. Some of the scientists at this symposium showed me how the torus has been encoded by different cultures for millennia. Apparently, ancient cultures had embedded this code in the most enduring forms then possible, in stories, in icons, in alphabets, and buildings. Here we are at one of the world's oldest sacred sites, the Osirian Temple at Abydos, Egypt.
Very little writing is found in the Osirian Temple. However, there is one very significant piece of information in that temple. It is a very faint but clear and precise drawing. It's not etched into the rock, it's not carved, it's burnt into the atomic structure of the rock in some extraordinary way.
Nassim has decoded the Osirian symbol in 3 dimensions. Since our world is not two-dimensional, it makes sense that codes relaying information about our world also wouldn't be limited to flat designs. His 3-dimensional version of the Osirian symbol starts with the vector equilibrium, a perfectly balanced force field with 12 equal energy lines radiating out. They stabilize its center like the 12 spokes of a wheel. The primary pattern of balanced energy flow around this structure is the torus. Here we expand to the next larger scale with a total of 64 pyramids called tetrahedra. If we then put spheres in representing the toroidal energy field surrounding each of the pyramids, and then we drop away the pyramids, we end up with a matrix that is, amazingly, an exact overlay for the Osirian icon, a 3-dimensional model of the same pattern that was burned into the rock wall of the Egyptian temple thousands of years ago. Now we travel across continents, from Egypt to China, where the same geometry appears at another sacred site built in 1420.
Then you go to the Forbidden City, where the sun gods reside, and where you find at the entrance the Fu Dogs, the guardians of the knowledge. They guard the knowledge under their paw.
The same geometry of 64 energy units is encoded again. I started wondering, is it just a coincidence that the exact same design appears in significant places on 2 different continents? But then Nassim showed me that this geometry of 64 is encoded time and again in cultures across the centuries and from all over the world. The Hebrew Kabbalistic tree of life creates the same structure we just saw, with the vector equilibrium again embedded at every level. The ancient Chinese system of wisdom called the I Ching is based on 64 hexagrams, symbols with 6 lines in a set, some continuous, some broken. These can be put together as the 6 edges of a tetrahedron, and together would form the 64 tetrahedron crystal. This same pattern shows up in modern scientific research. The double helix has an alphabet of 64 codons that are used to encode our human DNA. I had seen that there was advanced knowledge of the living geometry of the universe thousands of years ago, but how on earth did they know about it?
Most of the stories of ancient Egypt and Mayan and Incas talk about sun gods coming to the earth and teaching them engineering and writing and all of their science. I started to wonder if all these sun gods were not advanced civilization coming from another part of our galaxy. These texts and many ancient cultures describe them as coming in flying boats, or in the Vedic tradition, flying machines, and so on. There is many mention of these sun gods coming through time.
Could these early pilots from beyond our world be the ones responsible for sharing the knowledge of this code? Could they actually be tapping its power to propel themselves through the cosmos? This isn't where I thought my research would lead me, and these notions were rocking my world. But Nassim has impressive evidence to back up his theories, and I could see no other rational way advanced math and physics concepts would have been recorded over 3,000 years ago. I sought out one of the most knowledgeable investigators, Dr. Stephen Greer, the founder of the Center for the Study of Extraterrestrial Intelligence. He's conducted hundreds of interviews with top-ranking government and military witnesses.
And so when we talk about extraterrestrial intelligence, we're talking about civilizations that have reached the point of being sentient like we are, but whose technologies and perhaps social capabilities are such that they've been able to become interstellar or interplanetary civilizations. And when you look at the fact that the most conservative estimates are in the Milky Way galaxy that there are at least 10,000 Earth-like planets that have intelligent life on them, and that at least half of them are likely to be as advanced or more than ours. It's almost a certainty that there's intelligent life out there that have mastered the laws of the universe beyond what's currently taught at MIT and Caltech, to be able to transfer through space-time in real time through vast distances of interstellar space. We have over 4,000 cases where these objects have landed on terra firma and left physical evidence. We have over 3,500 pilot cases. We have hundreds of cases, including ones from the highest ranking investigator at the FAA, John Callahan, and numerous other operators where these objects have been tracked on radar going tens of thousands of miles per hour or dematerializing and then reappearing in another point in the sky.
Yes, there have been ET visitation, there have been crashed craft, there have been material and bodies recovered.
We have contact with aliens not originating from some foreign country, but from some other solar system. And I have been a party to that.
There were documents that I have seen that refer to the Roosevelt having several instances of UFO flyovers, and particularly after they took on board nuclear weapons. And my SEAL told me, Jordan, this, what have you got in your log? This never happened.
The crew going on duty and the crew coming off duty all saw the UFO just hovering in midair. It was a metallic circular object, and from what I understand, the missiles were all shut down. That means they went dead, and something turned those missiles off.
Now, remember, all this stuff is flying at several thousand miles an hour. So this thing fires a beam of light at the warhead, hits it, and then this thing flies up like this. Meanwhile, we're all going like this, fires another beam of light, goes around like this, we're going like this, fires another beam of light, goes down like this, fires another beam of light, and then flies out the way it came in. And the warhead tumbles out of space. The feeling at the time was that it must have been extraterrestrial. They took the film and they spooled off the part that had the UFO on it, and they took a pair of scissors and cut it off. They put that on a separate reel, they put it in their briefcase, they handed Major Mansman back the rest of the film and said, here, I don't need to remind you, Major Mansman, of the severity of a security breach. We'll consider this incident closed.
But who do you tell that you were involved in a UFO incident without them looking at you like you ain't wrapped too tight?
Out of all of the evidence for the existence of UFOs, one extraordinary phenomenon continues to astonish and inspire me. The appearance throughout the world of so-called crop circles. These elaborate designs appear mysteriously swirled into crops of grain in such a way that the stalks are bent over, yet remain alive. More than 5,000 of these patterns have appeared in over 30 countries, most of them in England. The media has led many people, including me at first, to write these crop patterns off as hoaxes, the nighttime work of a few pranksters. Of course, there have been faked versions, but those made by human hands are crude compared to the vast majority of these elegant creations. Could hoaxers have created all 5,000 of these patterns? Could a few people with ropes and boards have created something as complex and beautiful as this one, made in the dead of night in a driving rain and leaving no footprints in the soil? The electromagnetic field over the area where the crop's been laid down to create the image is often electrostatically charged. Some of these areas are littered with strange magnetic particles. One of the most amazing crop designs is not a circle, but a rectangle that seems to be a direct response to a message sent out into space in 1974. The message was a radio signal depicting our planet's location in our solar system and Earth's people, in hopes that it might be received and interpreted by an extraterrestrial intelligence. 27 years later, in 2001, this crop design appeared in England, along with what could be a self-portrait of the sender. This message matches the format of the NASA signal and describes a different solar system from ours, a picture of the sender, non-human DNA, and a microwave antenna they apparently used to communicate, rather than the radio antenna that we used. The antenna symbol had appeared a year earlier in exactly the same field, right next to a working radio wave antenna, like the one NASA used to send out the original signal. NASA continues to officially deny extraterrestrial contact of any kind. And yet, year after year, these spectacular creations appear. So what might these remarkable designs mean? Here are some two-dimensional versions that seem to be revealing the torus in 3D. Here is the vector equilibrium. And the related pattern of 64 that we saw encoded in the arts of so many ancient cultures. When I saw the coherence between the crop circles and the ancient encodings, I thought regardless of whoever created them and wherever they're from, there must be an important purpose to these designs. They're so coherent. I've come to believe that the pattern of the torus and the vector equilibrium, especially in the form of the 64 tetrahedron crystal, is showing us how energy works in the universe so that we can learn to align with it. I believe that they're giving us a model for accessing energy in a clean, safe, and limitless way, and a new means of propulsion. What more important message could there be to get to us, and especially now, from their perspective, as we're beginning to extend our careless reach beyond our planet? I got further confirmation of this notion when I met Dr. Jack Kasher, a former professor of physics at the University of Nebraska, who has also researched UFO phenomena. Presenting at a Sequoia symposium, Dr. Kasher showed a remarkable series of drawings by a woman named Lane Andrews, who claimed to have been invited onto an extraterrestrial spacecraft. I was startled to see her detailed sketches of the toroidal energy field that she said propelled the vehicle and protected the passengers. I subsequently interviewed James Gilliland. James has many hours of UFO footage from his ranch near Mount Adams in Washington state. He also claimed to have gone on board an alien spacecraft. What blew my mind was that he had never met Lane Andrews and had no knowledge of her experience, yet he described a phenomenon that was amazingly similar. Numerous ships with spinning rings of light. Could it simply be coincidental that James and Lane described the same torus dynamic, and that both of these people have been harassed extensively by government and military agencies? To some, the idea of UFOs may sound crazy, and yet from another perspective, it is completely plausible.
The Earth is about 4.5 billion years old. That's 4,500 million years old. What if there's another planet that's almost exactly like us? Almost exactly. 4,501 million years old. They're a million years ahead of us. And on a galactic scale, they're almost our twin brothers. So where are we going to be in a million years? We'll have solved all these problems, and there's another way, whether it's wormholes or warping space. There's got to be a way to generate energy so that you can pull it out of the vacuum. And the fact that they're here shows us that they've found a way.
This is a major shock to the human system that is in process. I understand why people in our generation, people who aspire to positions of political leadership, etc., never dare go near that question, because it's a worldview challenge. It's a fundamental worldview challenge.
So here we are, a relatively immature species struggling with possible self-destruction. If aligning with the torus does hold the key to a new form of clean, safe energy access, imagine the implications. This could be the most important technology breakthrough of our times. So who wouldn't want to have an energy source that's unlimited and freely available? That turned out to be a key question. And that's what led me down the next rabbit hole. It turns out that scientists as far back as the early 1900s have been developing alternative ways to access electricity without combustion. Nikola Tesla believed he had tapped into what he called radiant energy. Many scientists believe he was accessing what's now called free energy. But before Tesla could finish the project, his financier, banker J.P. Morgan, who had a monopoly on the copper used for electrical lines, recognized how Tesla's invention could transmit electricity without wires. He then shut down Tesla's funding. Tesla's lab was burned down and he was ostracized, all for trying to implement his vision of unlimited energy for everyone. A modern day invention.
Ok. Ok, thì anh sẽ tạm ngừng cái video ở đây và kết thúc cái phần 1. Duy Anh đã trước đây vài năm trước đã từng xem hết cái video này rồi, và cái góc nhìn của cái video này á, nó sẽ cho mọi người rất là nhìn những cái góc nhìn, nó không phải là chúng ta quanh quẩn ở cái địa phương của chúng ta, hoặc là chúng ta loanh quanh trong thành phố của chúng ta, mà chúng ta có một cái nhìn xa hơn nữa. Cái video này thì làm hơi xa tí, là từ góc nhìn từ năng lượng vũ trụ, nhưng mà cái phần 2 á và phần 3 đó nó đi sâu về cái việc về cái góc nhìn về tài chính, về những cái ngành công nghiệp nó chi phối toàn cầu này, ví dụ như năng lượng nè, dầu mỏ nè. Đó thì cái vấn đề ở trong cái video này á, nó đưa ra những cái bằng chứng về cái việc là năng lượng vũ trụ của chúng ta là luôn luôn nó gọi là năng lượng vô hạn á, mà chúng ta có thể tạo ra những cái cỗ máy gọi là cỗ máy năng lượng vĩnh cửu. Thì cái vấn đề đặt ra đó là khi mà chúng ta có đầy đủ năng lượng đi, và năng lượng sẽ sinh ra mọi thứ, từ lương thực đầy đủ nè, rồi tiền bạc đầy đủ. Khi mà có lương thực á, thì cuộc sống là mọi người trên trái đất này nó sẽ diễn ra một cách gọi là rất là tươi đẹp, và ai cũng có cuộc sống đầy đủ hết. Tuy nhiên là những cái về năng lượng á, và về cái việc chiếm hữu năng lượng á, nó là một cái ngành công nghiệp đến trăm nghìn, chục nghìn tỷ đô. Nên có một cái nó gọi là thuyết âm mưu á, đó là một vài nhóm người họ sẽ kiểm soát những cái ngành về kinh tế, về ngân hàng, về tài chính, về năng lượng, về nhiều thứ. Đó thì cái phần 2 và phần 3 nó sẽ nói sâu về cái góc nhìn này, nó về kinh tế. Đó thì cái video này mọi người có thể, nếu mà không đợi được là Duy Anh làm livestream reaction, thì mọi người có thể xem ở trên YouTube với từ khóa là try. Đó, ở góc màn hình á, mọi người sẽ thấy cái từ khóa là try, hoặc là mọi người có thể search là video Thịnh Vượng, Phồn Thịnh. Đó, các loại từ khóa nó như vậy. Thì cái video này rất là ít người họ xem được cái video này, và nhiều người xem thì họ sẽ có thể là bỏ qua, hoặc là như thế nào đó, tùy theo mỗi người một góc nhìn. Nhưng mà theo mình á, chúng ta xem cái video này dưới góc nhìn là chúng ta học được cái điều gì ở trong cái video này để áp dụng cho cái việc phát triển của chúng ta trong tương lai. Nghĩa là chúng ta làm việc, là chúng ta chiến đấu á, thì nó cũng dựa theo một phần gọi là năng lượng. Đó, nếu mà chúng ta kiểm soát được năng lượng á, và kiểm soát được những cái năng lượng tích cực á, thì cái gọi là nhiều thứ tốt đẹp nó sẽ đến với chúng ta. Và phần 2, phần 3 của cái video này nó sẽ nói sâu về góc nhìn về kinh tế, về những cái hướng chúng ta gọi là góc nhìn về kinh tế đó. Đối với kinh tế thường là vĩ mô. Nếu mà anh chị nào giao dịch có giao dịch quốc tế đó, thì những cái này nó là một trong những cái yếu tố nó ảnh hưởng trực tiếp đến công việc của mình. Kể cả trong cái đợt vừa rồi á, đó là cái đại dịch Covid á, đó thì mọi chỉ số trên gọi là trên toàn cầu này nó đều bị ảnh hưởng hết, và một cách gián tiếp hay trực tiếp nào đó nó ảnh hưởng đến cuộc sống của chúng ta, đúng không? Ngay cái thời điểm hiện tại cũng có rất là nhiều người họ gặp khó khăn đối với cái việc thu nhập của họ, và kể cả biết đâu được là anh chị cũng nằm trong số lượng này. Thì nó là một góc nhìn thôi, và đây là một cái video mình đã xem cũng từ khá là lâu rồi, và hiện tại mình đang muốn xem lại tiện thể làm thành một cái video livestream cùng với mọi người để cùng ôn tập lại cái mảng kiến thức này. Và trong có thể ngày mai hoặc ngày kia ha, thì mình sẽ thông báo để mình làm livestream, mình làm phần tiếp theo. Mình sẽ dự kiến làm thành 4 phần, và video này sẽ up trên YouTube của mình. Và nếu như anh chị nào muốn xem trực tiếp thì có thể search từ khóa là try hoặc là Phồn Thịnh để xem một mình, hoặc là nếu mà thích hứng thú xem cùng với Duy Anh để nghe những cái chia sẻ, những cái góc nhìn của Duy Anh, thì để lại cho Duy Anh những cái comment ở trên livestream nhé, hoặc là ở dưới cái phần mô tả của YouTube này nhé. Và xin chào, hẹn anh chị vào phần thứ 2 ha. Bye bye, chúc mọi người một buổi tối có nhiều thông tin, có thêm nhiều thông tin hơn nữa, và ngày mai chúng ta bắt đầu một đầu tuần nhiều năng lượng và nhiều thành công hơn. Xin chào.